The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 123. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women finding their inner journey to self-confidence 5 days a week. Get your free audiobook by visiting thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today we have a phenomenal lady on today. She is America's crisis coach, and she's here today to share her story, so I'm really honored to have her on. She also has her own successful podcast, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Faydra. Faydra, how are you doing today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am thrilled to be here. I'm such a big fan of your show. And yeah, to fill in some gaps. So I work with people who have been through unimaginable crisis. And I tell stories of people who have been through the worst times of their lives and yet come out of the fire bigger and better. And they really want to pay it forward. So that's just a little bit about how I roll.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And what's your cultural background?
I am Greek by heritage, but I was just raised Caucasian in America, so I don't really have an ethnic area that I lean towards. So I'm just a white girl living in California.
Awesome. Well, that's still awesome to be, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love California, so.
I'm in Northern California, which is dramatically different than what people believe California is all about. We get snow and we have lakes and mountains, and it's super, super cool.
Sweet. Well, thanks for sharing that. And, Faydra, what's your favorite self-confidence quote?
I have to be really honest. It's super cliche, but it is be the change, because every time that I have stepped into being what I needed when I was at my worst moment, I feel really powerful, and it makes me realize that I am really doing what I was put on this earth to do. And you can't be unconfident when you're doing what you know you were meant to do. So that's my confidence quote.
And I don't think it's cliche. I love that quote too, be the change, right? If you want to see change in the world, it has to start with you, because, how you work on yourself reflects everything else, right? So for me, it's a very powerful quote, just those 3 words, be the change. It's simple yet powerful, and it just makes you take action on the things that you want to do. So thanks for sharing that. And, in your own words, how would you define self-confidence?
I think that there's a level of just being comfortable in your own skin. And we all have imperfections. We all have elements of our life that we're not proud of or that aren't firing on all cylinders. And just knowing that that's okay, that we're still showing up with making the best of the available choices, as I like to put it, because sometimes we don't always have an optimal choice before us. But if you are showing up and giving 100% in all the areas of your life that you can manage in that moment, I think that is a perfect explanation.
Awesome. And I love your definition. And it's right. We have to embrace everything about us. Our weaknesses, our strengths, our flaws. I mean, one great woman who embraces her flaw is Cindy Crawford, when she, has her mole on her face, right? Most people wouldn't want that. But for her, it was just like, I don't care. I'm just going to show it off to the world. And, that was a great message to have, right? Like, just embrace everything about you, right? And that's what confidence is. So thanks for sharing that. And, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
Sadly enough, I was raised in a really horrific situation. My life experience as a child was pretty bad. I was born into a family where I think not having an abortion was literally the best decision that my mom ever made. After that, she just had me in these really difficult situations. So most of my life, from the time I was 3 until I was 13, I was being severely abused and tortured and emotionally just bankrupt. And I didn't get the type of childhood that I deserved. And I took a lot of those problems with me into my teen years and into my 20s. And I didn't have a lot of self-confidence, and I didn't have great social skills, and I didn't exactly understand how the world worked because I was living hand to mouth. So in college, I studied psychology, which was a game changer for me. And I started to understand myself. I understood my family dynamics and why things were the way that they were. And I was able to radically change my life and completely leave behind all the dysfunction that I had taken into my young adulthood. So for me, when I started to live a better life and get different results, it really impacted my confidence and made it possible for me to dream. Because as a child, I didn't really have dreams. I was just living day to day, hoping to make it through with as less abuse as possible. But when I became an adult, I realized that the gifts and talents that I was born with, one of which is speaking, the other is writing, that I could actually do something with that and that it would have value. So my confidence grew exponentially in my late 20s and into my 30s, and it created this career that I have that is magnificent, and I absolutely just love every day of my life, and probably would have been as successful, but not with the same skill sets if I hadn't had that childhood. And I wouldn't especially appreciate the level of confidence that I have because I have something to compare it to based on where I had been.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And, I think, situations happen to you for a reason, right? Like with you having a horrific childhood, it helped you realize that you can come out of it and be stronger than ever and then show others what's possible, right? Especially you becoming a crisis coach, because then you can relate to other people who might be in the same situation or a similar situation than you. And, it's amazing what can happen when, kids can pick up so many things, and the situations we have in our life can affect us in a great way or in a bad way, right? So, it's great that you're able to share the story and be able to come out of it, especially in a situation like this, because most people are like, well, I used to be this way and this is why I'm this way, right? You're just like, well, I went through the same thing, but I did something about it, I took a stand, I took responsibility for my life and decided to do something different. So, after that, realization, what's your life like now?
My life is dramatically different. I spent 22 years working in the fields of mental health, social work, and family court services. So I've had a wide range of practical work experience. And then 3 years ago, I went through the worst time of my life. I was part of a national scandal. My husband had been accused of a white-collar crime, and we fought the accusation for 6 years, and ultimately we lost, and he was sent to prison for essentially the rest of his life. He was given a 43-year sentence. And when that happened, I was accosted by the media, and the fallout was just incredibly painful. And I didn't know anybody who had ever been through anything like I had. And even though I had been in the field of mental health and trained in the areas of psychology, I didn't have the tools to manage that level of personal crisis. And I had to dig really deep and figure things out, which I did, thankfully, but not before I got to rock bottom for me. And coming through that fire myself is really what prompted me to take my business to the next level and to help people, because I felt so alone when I was going through my situation, and that confidence that I had cultivated in my 20s and 30s was shattered. And I knew that I was a really good person, and I knew that the situation that I was in, I was part of a collateral damage. I didn't cause the issue, and yet I was facing the repercussions. And I had to dig back and find that confidence. And it took well over a year for me to find my voice. And now I use my podcast so other people will not feel alone. And I have people come on the show and they talk about their story and how they made it through. And we talk about the very practical steps that they took to get to the other side. And the show is really helping people take action in their own lives and to not feel so alone.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that story. Especially that type of situation. It's like, if I wouldn't even know what to do, to be honest. Just you saying that was just like, wow, right? Yeah,
and I didn't know what to do either. And that was the problem, that I had so many people just like you say, oh my gosh, I don't know what to tell you. And when you hear that over and over again, it starts to feel like there's no way out. And it took a lot of digging deep for me to believe that life was going to get better. And I'm just convicted that I need to make sure that people who feel like they're suffering alone or suffering silent don't have to.
Totally agree. Which is why I also, created this podcast. There's women out there who feel like they're the only ones who are suffering with self-confidence issues, when there's so many women out there who was, suffering from it and be able to come out of it and have a better life. So, it's great that, we can have podcasts that can really help people out there realize that they're not alone. We have that support system for you, and you can listen to it anytime. right?
Well, and that's what I love about your show. I'm a big fan, and you're putting out frequent content. So people who are struggling, they can get access to you all the time and access to great women who have taught others how to feel confident. So I absolutely love your show and what you're doing with it.
Thank you. I truly appreciate that. And Faydra, if our listeners are listening to your episode, they're hearing your story and they're inspired, to take action in their own life, what would be that one tip you would give to them regarding self-confidence?
I would say get into community. A lot of times we isolate when we feel like we don't have it all together. And really the best thing that you can do is get a trusted mentor or somebody that you admire and ask for a moment of their time, offer to take them to lunch or for coffee. And just be honest. Don't be whiny. Be transparent and honest and seek to understand. And you'll find that women especially are so willing to pay it forward and so willing to share their own expertise and advice. So I would encourage you to get into community and not isolate.
Awesome. Great tip. And I believe too, just getting into a support group, maybe a women's support group, having a mentor, having an accountability partner really makes a huge difference, right? Because then you're not alone. Someone's out there looking out for you and it just propels you to take more action into your life. So, Faydra, if our listeners want to get to know a little bit more of what you do, wants to listen to your podcasts, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Yeah, absolutely. The best way to get a great taste of spending time with me is to go to crisiscrusher.com. It is a series of videos and some downloads that really give you a sense of what it is like and what you need when you are going through a crisis. Because even if you aren't going through one right now, chances are you know someone who is, or it is just a matter of time until something happens to you that you didn't expect. And my podcast is called Coming Out of the Fire. You can find it on iTunes and Stitcher, or you can listen to it right from my website, which is americascrisiscoach.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Faydra, check out her site, check out her podcast. You can also head on over to thetaoofselfconfidence.com and search for Faydra's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else we talked about. And I really want to thank Faydra for taking the time to share her story. What a, phenomenal story. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
It was an honor to have you on. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of The Tao of Self-Confidence. Subscribe to The Tao of Self-Confidence on iTunes and Stitcher to hear more stories of amazing women finding their inner journey to self-confidence.